Everyone. Hopefully everyone is doing well. It is Tuesday, March the 7th, currently 4 o'clock local time. My name is Jonathan. I am your teacher for this course, PLAR History and Geography here at WASA, live here in Sulaco. We're at week number 5 of this term, term 2A. This is the last week before March break, so we're almost there. So hopefully we can hang in there and get some work done before break next week. Again, this is week number 5 of this term, of this 9-week term. Again, I'm Jonathan. I'm your teacher for this course. We're live right now on this Tuesday where it is absolutely freezing outside. It's windy, it's snowing here and there. It's just absolutely cold outside, and it is still winter out there. So, and that's that for the weather. You can listen and participate live as always by listening by the radio. I believe it's 91.1. If you're listening that way, you can call in the WASA studio. If you're a student, again, we'll put you live on air. That way you can listen, you can ask questions that way as well. Again, you can simply call in from absolutely anywhere, either at home, in your learning center, in your community if it's open. I know that this weather is impacting some of our communities up north, and some of our learning centers up there is currently closed. So again, I'll take that into account. But again, simply call in, listen. You can still log on to Smart Bridget and still learn through that as well. Like always, you can get in touch and hold me at any point, any time, simply by phone call, extension 2221. That is 807-737-1488. Again, just ask for PLAR History Geography Teacher Jonathan, or extension again 2221. You can always email me as well, jho@nnec.on.ca. So again, students, if I email you your mark sheet, again, make sure you check your email. Okay, or if I can find you on Facebook, I will attach your mark sheet on Facebook as well. Again, Facebook, social media, you can find me as a friend at jhowasa. Alright, so we shall get started for today. Over the next 60 minutes, we will discuss the following: the Canadian Constitution and women in Canadian politics. That is what we have in store for today. Today is the last class for the history portion, okay, just for the history portion. We will wrap up lesson number 3 today. After today, we'll be done with the history, which means that next class, this coming Thursday, we will start geography. That is right, class. We will start geography next class. Not today, but next class. So again, today, wrapping up lesson number 3. Again, we're looking at Canada since the 80s to present day, give or take. Then we'll look over questions on assignment number 8 in your workbook. Go over those questions, and then history will all be completed. So students who just need the history portion or just need your history credit, you'll be done after today. But you still need geography, again, still continue and learn along with us. But before we get started and go through today's class notes and lecture, let's quickly open up your textbook. So again, hopefully you have that open up with you on page 21 in your textbook. Page 21 is where we'll be starting for today's class. Again, looking at the Canada Act or the Constitution Act. And then we'll look at some key Canadian women in politics. So again, if you have your textbook, again, open up to page 21. That's where we will be starting for today. And then we'll just go through all these slides. All right, hopefully you have your textbook open. Hopefully you have your workbook open as well and turn to page. Oh, I don't know. Let's find out what page it is. Page, it doesn't have a page number, so you're gonna need to find assignment number 8. Okay, assignment number 8, your last assignment for history. Okay, assignment number 8 in your workbook, your assignment. Again, very short assignment out of 16 marks. There's just 3 questions, believe it or not. Let's quickly go over these questions so that we have a good understanding of what the question is asking before we go through today's class notes. So, question number 1 asks, when was the Canada Act signed? Again, as you go through your assignments, keep in mind proper full complete sentences with details and capitalizations and punctuation, spelling and grammar, neatness, details. Again, keep that in mind as you go through your assignments. Make sure you check everything before you submit your assignments so that it's good work that you're handing in. Again, take that time, put that effort in. So the first part in question number 1 asks, when was the Canada Act signed? So again, I'm looking for a date, looking for a year. So again, you can simply start off by saying something like this. You don't have to start it off like this, but it's just an example. You can say the Canada Act okay, was signed on, again, I'm looking for a date. A date, a year, something on the lines of that. It's what the question is asking. And then the second part to that question asks, what did this act do for Canada? Again, you can simply say, start by saying this act okay, this act allowed Canada to do what? Okay, so again, keep in mind that again, we're writing full, complete sentences with details. Again, not just writing out the answer, but keeping in mind we want to write in full, complete sentences with details. So that's question number 1. Let's quickly look at question number 2. Question number 2 is an opinion-based question. So again, I'll put that in over here. So it's an opinion. So it's asking, what do you think? Okay, it asks, do you think North America, which is Canada, United States, and Mexico, will ever include other countries in a free trade agreement? Okay, so we have to answer that question. Do you think we will allow other countries to join our free trade agreement? You can simply say yes, or you can say no. But then you need to tell me why. Okay, why or why not? Okay, so we say yes because, no because, for which reason. Okay. Again, there's no right or wrong answer for this, but again, it allows you to use your critical thinking skills to elaborate on what you know, background content, to apply what we learned in class to answer this question. So do you think other countries besides Canada, United States, and Mexico will ever join our free trade agreement? Yes or no? And then tell me why. Why or why not? Because of this reason, because of that reason. Why do you feel this way? Okay. You will definitely see opinion-based questions, something similar to this when you write your final test. So just keep that in mind as well. And lastly, question number 3 is a little chart. This chart looks at some key Canadian politician. Your job here is to give your thoughts. So what do you think about each person? Okay, do you like them? Do you dislike them? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Then tell me why. Using facts, okay, using evidence, Canadian history to provide your reasoning, okay? Sure, you can tell me that you dislike this person, but tell me why. Okay, why do you dislike that person? Why do you like this person? Etc. So again, that's Mackenzie King, Pierre Trudeau, Brian Mulroney, Governor General Gene Save, and Governor General Andrew Clarkson. Okay, so couple Prime Minister, couple Governor General of Canada in the past. So keep that in mind. Again, some of these names we already talked about. Some of these names will dive in greater details just a moment. But again, give your thoughts on what you think about each person. Again, like them, dislike them, then tell me why again. And that's pretty much assignment number 8. Again, pretty straightforward. Again, I'm not asking much. Everything is exactly the same. So let's get to today's class. Let's learn about some of these figures. Let's learn about what the Constitution Act was all about. So I'm going to quickly lecture for a few minutes, about the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so. Shouldn't take us that long to go through these notes. And then hopefully I want to give the class some time to work on your last assignment for today. Again, just a reminder, feel free to call in, listen in, log in, Smart Bridget, ask questions, engage with us, learn with us. Again, if you need any help, any questions, that's why I am here. So our last lesson for today, lesson number 3, simply called Canada Act and Free Trade. Canada Act and Free Trade. Our learning goals. We will be learning about the Canadian Constitution. Okay, we will be learning about women in Canadian politics. Not every single woman in politics, but just some. Some key ones and why they stand out. So again, our success criteria is simply I can explain Brian Mulroney impact towards First Nations, and I can explain how Gene Save, Clarkson, Campbell, how they broke down barriers for women equality. Okay, fighting for women's right, for equalness among men. So that's where we are heading for today's class. That's the direction we are heading. The Canada Act of 1982, also known as the Constitution Act. It was signed on April 17th, 1982. Again, that's could be one answer. So if you go back to this, you can simply say April 17th, 1982, or just say in 1982. Again, anything on the lines of that will give you full marks. Again, it's just a question asked for the dates. Again, the date's not always necessarily relevant, but again, we need to answer what's being asked. So again, the Canada Act was also known as the Constitution Act. Again, whether or not it's called the Canada Act or Constitution Act is the same thing. It gives Canada control over its own constitution. Again, remember before we always talked about how Canada was linked to the British Empire, and if we wanted to change something, do something, we had to have Britain's permission. But now with the Constitution Act, The Canada Act, we are now have complete control over our own sovereignty, nation, our constitution. We can do whatever we want. So again, this came into place 1982 with Pierre Elliott Trudeau signing off on the Constitution Act, where he included the Charter of Rights and Freedoms as well in the Constitution. So again, we already learned what the Charter of Rights and Freedoms are all about, how it provides Canadian citizens legal rights and freedoms to protect themselves against government abusing their power, or if their rights are violated or infringed upon, they can look towards the Charter as a framework for common understanding and values for living in our society. So again, big moments in terms of Canadian history, where we're now technically officially our own country, where we can make our own decision on our own. Every single province, every single territory in Canada signed off on the Constitution except one, and that was Quebec. Again, we talked about Quebec last week, last class, and how they had this ongoing tension with their identity, how they want to maintain their culture, of French living speaking Canadians. Again, all about the Quiet Revolution. Again, because of all that conflict, Quebec didn't sign off on the Constitution Act. However, it doesn't mean much technically. It still applies to Quebec in terms of whatever is outlined in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So again, know the date when it was signed and know what its goals were. Okay, to give Canada complete control over its constitution. So again, Prime Minister Trudeau, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, our Queen, Queen Elizabeth, signed off on the Constitution, and boom, it made it official in 1982. After Trudeau, Brian Mulroney was Canada's Prime Minister. Again, Mulroney, we'll talk about him for a bit. Mulroney wanted and favored lower taxes. He wanted less government spending, and he also wanted to improve relations with the United States, free trade, and obviously he wanted to please Quebec. Again, Quebec didn't sign off on a constitution, so he wanted to make Quebec happy. Canada in the 1990s, well, in the 90s, it was a period of recession, unable to reduce government debt. There were cutback on social services, pension, and even welfare. One thing Brian Mulroney was famous for was introducing the GST tax. Okay, the goods and service tax, the GST tax. We don't necessarily have it nowadays. It is still just combined with our HST tax or whatnot. So again, because of this tax, it was introduced by Mulroney, and he eventually resigned in 1993 and all that. But again, Mulroney, again, he wanted favor lower taxes. Not very popular in terms of our Canadian Prime Minister. But again, when he was in office, he wanted to do a couple of things: improve relationship with the United States, establish free trade, and wanted to make Quebec happy. So what else did Mulroney do? Free trade. He established free trade. He is continued that with NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, that came into play in 1994. Again, it consists of Canada, United States, and Mexico. Free trade, especially in with NAFTA, can be controversial, which we'll talk more about when we'll look into geography. But some people supported NAFTA, some people did not. Again, some people liked free trade, some people did not. here are a couple reasons that people did not necessarily like free trade. Businesses, especially here in Canada, would be moved into Mexico, where they could produce the product at a much cheaper rates. American companies would now operate in Canada because of the strong American dollar. And again, we'll see a lot of more American influence here in Canada if free trade continues to grow. So again, there's pros and cons. We're looking at free trades. Those are just some examples of negatives. We'll look more about the positives when we look into geography. But again, this is something that Mulroney was passionate about. This is something that he wanted to straighten and grow when he was in office. Brian Mulroney, what else did he do? What else did he do? In 1987, again, remember one of his goals was to please Quebec. So he established something called the Meech Lake Accord. The Meech Lake Accord in 1987. As I said already, Quebec did not sign onto the Constitution. So Mulroney established the Meech Lake Accord so that it will allow Quebec to sign onto the Constitution. With the Meech Lake Accord, it will recognize Quebec as a distinct society. Distinct society, meaning that they will be seen as different. Again, whether or not it's fair or not, you can argue that. Elijah Harper was an MP of Manitoba. He fought for Aboriginal rights. He basically stepped up, voiced his opinion, supported First Nation rights, and said that if Quebec was to be treated as a distinct society, why can't First Nations be recognized as a distinct society as well, based on their tradition, culture, language, history, you name it. So because of this, it never happened. It was never passed. So Meech Lake Accord, it died. Boom. It never went any further than that. So again, this is important for what Mulroney did. Again, Meech Lake Accord, distinct society for Quebec. Again, he wanted Quebec to sign off onto the Constitution. So in a way, it would unite Canada as one, where all provinces and territories would sign on. But again, it never really happened because Elijah Harper fought for Aboriginal rights, and it never was passed. If the Meech Lake Accord was passed, it would establish 5 things. It will recognize Quebec as a distinct society. Quebec would participate in naming Supreme Court judges. Quebec could veto any constitution change, which is, by the way, super hard to do anyways. 4, limits were placed on federal spending in Quebec. And 5, Quebec will have increased power in areas of immigration. So if the Meech Lake Accord was passed, Quebec could do all of these 5 measures, but it never happened. So let's move on. But oh, Brian Mulroney didn't stop there. Even though the Meech Lake Accord died and it failed and it was never passed and it was not successful, it didn't stop him there. He tried one more time and he established something called the Charlottetown Accord in 1992. The Charlottetown Accord in 1992. It was the last attempt by Mulroney to get Quebec to sign on to the Constitution. So basically, the Charlottetown Accord is very similar to the Meech Lake Accord. The Charlottetown Accord stated 4 measures. 1, recognize Quebec as a distinct society. Again, that was the same thing. 2, Quebec will be able to opt out federal compensation. and we would be able to run their own programs. 3, Quebec could control development and labor training. And lastly, 4, Quebec would have the right to choose 3 Supreme Court judges. In the end, the Charlottetown Accord went to the people, and Canadian citizens voted and simply said no. Okay, it was not passed. 54% said no, 46 said yes. So in the end, boom, the Charlottetown Accord was dead as well. It was unsuccessful. Nothing happened. Nothing came about it. And still to this day, Quebec is still not necessarily signed off onto the Constitution or the Canada Act. So again, when looking at the Charlottetown Accord, the Meat Lake Accord, it was all movements, activities created by Mulroney. Like I said, in 1993, Mulroney eventually stepped down and resigned as Prime Minister. And it later led to Kim Campbell becoming Canada's first female Prime Minister. And then as we move forward into the 90s, we have Jean Chrétien of the Liberal Party in power. And then Paul Martin came into play, Stephen Harper recently, and now we have Justin Trudeau as our Prime Minister. Again, as time changes, things change. We have new leadership, new government, new Prime Ministers. And each one is unique and different in their own way, based on their political ideologies and views, what they did for the people, and their impact in Canadian history. Shifting gears, moving along, we'll talk about Canadian women in politics. Again, we talked lots about women already throughout this course, and we're just going to continue looking at those themes and how women, especially in politics, change and how they broke down barriers for women in general. So as we progress towards the 80s, the 90s, women became highly more involved in Canadian politics. Again, could be Governor General or even Prime Minister. Going back to your textbook, again, we talked about the Constitution Act, the Canada Act. We talked about who Brian Mulroney was and the Meat Lake Accord. We talked about him and the free trade, why it was good and why it was bad. And now, starting on the bottom of page 22, where it says Canadian women in politics, that's where we will begin our next section for today's class. We'll be looking at 4 women. Jean Sauve, S-A-U-V-E. She was a Governor General of Canada. We'll talk about Andrea Clarkson, C-L-A-R-K-S-O-N. And we'll talk about Michelle Jean, capital J-E-A-N. And we'll talk about Kim Campbell, capital C-A-M-P-B-E-L-L, Prime Minister. Again, these 4 women, we'll talk about why they are significant and what makes them stand out in terms of Canadian women in politics. I always talk about the roles of the Governor General and the roles of Canada's Prime Minister. Again, Canada's current Governor General is David Johnston, one or the other. Again, some may argue that the Governor General role in Canada is more significant even than the Prime Minister. Is it? Well, you can decide on for that. Someone is trying to gain control of my smartboard. Click cancel. Oh, I'm going to do it. There we go. So the Governor General of Canada acts as the Queen's representative in Canada and is the head of state. The Governor General gives royal assent to pass bills in the House of Commons, signs off on state documents, reads the throne speech, has the power to appoint court judges. It is often selected by the Prime Minister, so the Prime Minister selects who they want to be Governor General, and the Governor General usually lasts about for 5 years in office, and then a new one is eventually appointed. So again, cannot be Governor General of Canada forever. You're usually only about 5 years. Whereas the role of the Prime Minister of Canada is the head of the government in Canada, provides leadership, direction for the government, selects member of cabinets, appoint executive member, even select judges such as Supreme Court judges. And Prime Minister should be able to explain policies and programs that they are creating so that or that they are served for Canadian citizens. So again, some may argue, like I said, the Governor General has a more significant role in terms of its position in Canadian politics. Jean Sev. Why was she important? Why is she mentioned? Why is she in our textbook? Because she was the first woman ever to be Governor General of Canada. Okay, first Governor General of Canada, Jean Sev. That's why she's significant. Before her, we never ever had one in that position. We never really had any women in terms of in Canadian politics. So that's why she's significant. Uh, she focused on youth, world peace. She worked for a CBC journalist for over 20 years, but she was Canada's first ever Governor General of Canada. She was the 23rd Governor General of Canada, if you're wondering. So prior to all that, it was all men and male, but Jean Sev, first woman to be appointed Governor General of Canada. So that's why she is significant. That's why she is in our textbook. Adrienne Clarkson, well, she was also Governor General of Canada, a female Governor General of Canada. She was born in Hong Kong, came to Canada as a refugee. She worked for CBC as a writer and a host. Again, when she was in this position of Governor General, she focused on military, the North, and even visited Aboriginal communities. What makes Adrienne Clarkson significant was that she was the first person of a visible minority to be Governor General of Canada. Okay, the first person to be a visible minority to be Governor General. Significant, sure, why not? But again, it just shows and demonstrates more women stepping up, taking key roles in office and in politics. Next, Michelle Jean, also a female governor of Canada, more recently back in 2005-ish. She was born in Haiti, emphasized on issues such as youth, Aboriginal Canadians, military arts, and even fought for violence against women. Again, another example of Governor General in Canada. And lastly, Kim Campbell was Canada's first ever woman to be Prime Minister, and the only one so far. No one has yet, but Kim Campbell. Again, that was back in 1993. Remember how I said Brian Mooney stepped down or retired as Prime Minister? Kim Campbell, again, since she was associated with the same political party, she took that position. She wasn't Canada's Prime Minister for very, very long, but when she was there, she improved criminal code, firearms, and sexual assault laws. Kim Campbell focused on debt rather than jobs, and she refused to discuss social programs. Again, not ideal point of view that she took with that. And as a result, the next election came about, and she lost in that election and lost the vote to be prime minister. And boom, we had a new prime minister. And I believe at that point, John Christian took over as Canada's prime minister. But again, why Kim Campbell is significant? Because she's the first one to be Canada's prime minister, first ever, and first one so far. So some indigenous content within the 1980s to present day, well, it has definitely improved upon. There was the Oka crisis in 1990, where it fought over land territories with the Mohawk community. Again, that was really violent. It was shown on the media and on the news. But Aboriginal voice was definitely improving upon. There was a more public awareness based on residential school situation that took place. Again, some of us may have heard about it. Some of us still don't know what residential school is all about. Again, some of us never learned about it in school growing up. But residential school is a huge part in terms of Canadian history. It was all about taking First Nation children away from the community, from the family, and placing them in this institutional government funded school where they would technically kill the Indian in a child. They would assimilate them in terms of learning the white Eurocentric way of living, thinking, and traditional values. Again, they were unable to practice their First Nation culture, tradition, values. None of that was allowed. So again, that was what the purpose was. Again, not a bright moment in terms of Canadian history. It is still a part of our nation's history. So again, we should definitely learn about it and emphasize it. But it took the government not until recently, 2008, when former Prime Minister Stephen Harper finally apologized about the situation in terms of Indian residential schools. So again, great progress has been come about. We're still not quite there yet, but again, a lot more of us are aware about the situation happening in our communities. Uh, again, it's still not quite there yet, but again, a greater awareness in terms of the public. And again, trying to integrate as much as we can in terms of our indigenous population as well. But again, moving forward, indigenous identity today, well, back in 1867, when Canada joined Confederation, Canadians were confident that Aboriginal people would become absorbed into mainstream Euro-Canadian societies. It took them almost another 150 years. Again, this is Canada's 150 year, and it has not happened. The key to all this was adaptability for them to be able to adapt to the situation. First Nation in current day, in the 20th century, learn how to be a part of Canadian society without compromising their cultural identity. They always knew who they were, they always knew where they came from, and they always remember that. Again, with a new voice, and as we transition along, we're now telling the rest of Canada about their stories, their struggles, and their values as well. So that's pretty much the history portion of this course. Again, we're still creating history as we know it today. Karl Marx, the father of communism, once said, and I quote, Men make their history, but do not know that they are making it, end quotes. So again, what's going on nowadays, whether we are aware of it subconsciously or not, is still a part of history. Again, Canada is turning 150 this year. There's probably going to be tons of celebration across our beautiful nation of ours. So who knows what we have in store and what more Canadian history we have. So going back to your textbook, again, it talks about Jean Sav on page 24, Clarkson and Michelle Jean on page 25, and on page 26, it talks about Kim Campbell. So again, you can read quite a bit more about these four Canadian women in politics and what they achieved. You could simply quickly do more of a Google search and learn more about their achievements. But again, just a quick little snapshot of why they were significant. Going back to your assignment, again, hopefully now we can now answer when was the Constitution Act signed? Again, 1982. And what was the purpose of the Canada Act? Again, it allowed Canada to control its own constitution. And with your knowledge and what you understand about free trade, question number 2 asks, do you think North America will allow other countries to join its free trade agreement? Yes or no? Again, it's all about what you think. Again, for this question, it's an opinion-based question. I love these types of questions because it asks you to think outside the box, use your critical thinking skills, and to elaborate on what you think, yes or no. And I always love reading about what you think. Again, when looking at history, there's so many different perspectives that we can take upon. So again, not all of us may necessarily agree, which is okay too. Question number 3, again, like I said, is a little charts where it talks about Canadian politician in various roles, Prime Minister and Governor General. For this question, you are to give your thoughts. Okay, it says right here, give your thoughts about this person and his or her place in Canadian history with regards to detail provided in this course. So what do you think? Give your thoughts. Okay, your thoughts about the person. So again, back in lesson number 2, we learned about Mackenzie King, what he did. So again, if you can't remember him, go back, flip to lesson number 2, and learn more about Mackenzie King. Trudeau, Pierre Trudeau, well, we talked about him last week about Quebec and the Quiet Revolution in terms of the FLQ and the War Measures Act. Today we talked about Brian Mulroney, who he was, what he introduced, what he envisioned, what he created. And we talked about Governor General Jean Sav, who she was, why we talked about her, and Andrea Clarkson, what made her stand out. So again, I'll mark each for telling me your thought about each person, and another mark for providing details to support your reasoning. Are there any questions? If there are, you know how to get a hold of me. Simply just let me know. Again, phone call, email, Facebook. I'm here to help with any of your difficulties. Again, that pretty much concludes and wraps up the history portion of this course. So technically now, PLAR history is now done. Okay, it's now done. Again, you can now write your test if you complete all assignments. Again, just a reminder that tests is the one that counts. Your assignments is just there to demonstrate your thinking, your learning, but what you get on your final test is what actually counts. So just keep that in mind. So these are, in a way, just practice questions. Again, just attempt each questions on each assignment, get them to me, and then we can move on towards your tests. And again, if you're having problems or I feel that I need more practice on one particular assignment, again, we can work on that. I can simply just ask you to redo it, to improve upon it, and then we can then be able to write your tests. So again, as I always encourage class of students, continue to work on your assignments. Next class this Thursday at the same time, we'll be back here live once again, as we always do. We will start PLAR Geography, okay, the second portion of this course. We'll start lesson number 4, where we'll look at human geography. Again, very exciting. Make sure you tune in, come to class, students, and we'll learn through about that. And then after that, we have March break. Again, next week, no classes next week. We're off. March break. Again, a little break in between our studies. And then after March break, we'll just continue off, mainly in geography. We'll finish off lesson 4, work on lesson 5, and then just at the start of April, we'll be done this term. Term 2A will be done. So again, work on your assignments. Assignment of 8, again, 3 questions, 2 questions, a chart. It shouldn't take you that long to complete. Again, an estimated rough time should take you about 20 minutes, half an hour, give or take, depending on our learning skills and our strengths. But again, it shouldn't take us more than about 20 minutes or half an hour. It could even take you 10 minutes, who knows? But again, it shouldn't take you more than about 20 minutes to half an hour. It might take you a bit longer, which is okay too, but again, it's a fairly short assignment in terms of assignment number 8. So I think we'll stop it for today. It's cold outside, so again, hopefully you're staying warm, bundle up, winter's still here. Hopefully the snowfall and this crazy windy like conditions will be gone by tomorrow, who knows, but hopefully it will warm up soon. That's it for me. Up next, Doug will be back with his course, but that's it for me. I'll see and hear everyone back here on Thursday at 4 p.m. Central Time as we start PLAR Geography. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your evening. I'll see you then. Thank you.